Well, welcome to another discussion with Wolfe Braude from Agbiz. He's manager of their fruit desk. The last time we spoke to him, we focused on the AGOA Act, and he explained to us exactly what it is and why it is so important for South Africa to trade with the US. Today we're talking about South Africa and US legislation. Now, as I mentioned last time, there's been friction between South Africa and the US for quite some time now. What has led to this, Wolfe?
Well, we have unfortunately had a few areas of foreign policy disagreement, and it has seemed over the last 2 to 3 years that there's been a consistent series of incidents which unfortunately have introduced friction into the relationship. One of them your viewers would be familiar with, the Lady R, the ship that docked in Simonstown with alleged arms shipments. Then there's a matter of us training pilots that will then go back to China with the expertise. Then there's some alleged issues around financing from China and Russia. And then we have our practicing naval exercises with Russia around the time of some of the peaks of the Ukrainian conflict recently. So all of these issues together have led in America to a complaint that we are pursuing a path which is not aligned to American national security interests. At the same time, I mean, it must be said that each country has a right to pursue its own path and its own national security interests and decisions. But at the same time, the Americans have a sovereign right to then push back against us as much as we would have a right to make our own choices. But this has led now to 3 attempts so far in Congress to introduce legislation to, in a sense, push back against South Africa's foreign policy choices. And each of those would have impacted our participation in AGOA, which would have been the direct commercial impact.
So what are the most recent developments?
Well, most recently, a bill was introduced earlier this year, a standalone bill to try and trigger a review of South Africa in terms of its relationships with BRICS countries and its overall commercial dealings with the United States, with BRICS countries, and to get a sense of whether we are indeed a national security risk to the United States under the definition. That bill stalled in the Congress. It hasn't made much progress. So the operative clauses of that bill that would trigger the work were taken out, were copied and inserted then into an annual National Defense Authorization Act that passes annually through Congress. That's the House of Representatives, and then through the Senate, and goes to the President for signature. And they are amongst, say, a few hundred clauses and amendments that are attached. People bolt on from both parties amendments that they want to see carried through because they know this is an annual bill. It's hardly ever vetoed, if ever, because it deals with authorization for funding for the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And so this means that it cannot be vetoed by the President as an amendment when it gets to his desk or to her desk in future. And the concern is that if it was passed, it automatically triggers this national security review. Where it is at the moment, it has successfully passed the House of Representatives, that is the one chamber of Congress. It is now gone before Senate. But what is very positive is that the clauses have been removed from the Senate's draft version of the bill. So whereas they were included in the House bill, in the Senate they've been removed. So to reintroduce them, someone would have to stand up on the floor of the Senate and actually vote, nominate them and sponsor them, and then have them voted upon. And even if they were successful then, once the Senate's got a draft version, the House and the Senate must combine their drafts together and form a compromise, which is a lot of haggling, negotiating. You can imagine hundreds and hundreds of politicians in a room trying to thrash out legislative compromises. So clauses get sacrificed, get watered down, get booted. There's a fair odds that that's sifting process would again remove these amendments before they'd get to President Biden at the end of this year.
You did mention a concern, but perhaps you'd like to elaborate on that. What would be the impact for South Africa if the bill gets passed by the US Congress, and more particular agriculture?
The consequence is that, within a short period of time of the bill being assented to, those amendments then they're triggered immediately. Within 30 days, one phase kicks in. Within 90 days, another part of it kicks in. And those reviews have to be undertaken, and they have to be done officially, and they have to report back. The reports have to be taken back to the committees, etc. The impact is that if we were to be designated as a national security risk, we would very likely then lose our participation in AGOA. It would almost certainly lead to us being suspended, because one of the AGOA eligibility criteria is a national security criterion. So that is very unhelpful, and also it would then have greater investment implications for South Africa in terms of the trade and investment relationships between the two sides. It's not often known that it's not that well known that actually there's very good bilateral trade in our favor with the Americans. We have a positive trade balance. In fact, our investment into the States is slightly over half of what comes in total. So let's say the Americans are investing, it's just over about 8 billion. We then take investing in the States about 5 billion. So there's significant benefit to both parties to not have this happen, but the consequences would spill over in terms of investor sentiment, market reactions, and etc. However, fortunately at this stage, it doesn't look like it's going to occur.
Wolfe, thank you very much. And that is our second discussion with Wolfe Braude. If you did miss our talk to him about AGOA, please go back and have a look at our previous interviews. The next time when we talk to him, it will be about the EU. This time the EU. There's always someone, isn't there?
Yeah.
Thank you, Wolfe. Thank you very much for joining us again.